I was kind of unhappy in my role. Um, and I had a bunch of friends who were engineers. So I'd been thinking, I loved SQL. I was sort of thinking I wanted to be an engineer. I took an online, one of those free Python classes from MIT, and found it really hard to actually hold myself to taking the class, which I'm sure it's pretty common. I'm sure you hear that a lot. So I mentioned to my partner, I was like, oh, he's a engineering manager. I was like, it just sounds so fun. I wish I could do that. And he was like, one of the guys on my team literally switched to engineering a year ago. Do you want to talk to him? He was the one, that was Max. He came to launch and was like, yeah, you got to do it. But I guess I was also kind of referred by all of the recruiters at Wayfair, because obviously they were hiring out of launch a lot. And when I said, I need to look around and find the best one, they all said, oh, go to launch. That's the best one that we hire from.
I don't know if it was official referral, but one of my good friends, he was in, I want to say maybe cohort like 18, 16 or something like that. It was a while ago. But he went through it and he saw crazy success. Obviously, he went from a job that he was really unhappy with. And then when he came out of launch, he was making really good money in Boston. And I was kind of going through the same thing in terms of Pennsylvania. Like, I was stuck in a job that I didn't like. So obviously the process worked for him. And he was the one who suggested that I apply. So I was sort of referred in that way. I was kind of interested in a whole bunch of different fields because I just wasn't happy where I was in the field that I was in. So I think that definitely gave me a push to start learning about software development. But once he told me about his success before I applied the time trade, I started doing some courses on my own and things like that to try to get my feet wet. But yeah, I'd say that was kind of the catalyst into me being fully interested in software development.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think, for launch itself, I had an incredibly positive experience there. And I think that launch, gave me a tool set both, and this was really important to me when I was researching, was, not only technologically, but from a career perspective, like that support from Corinne and the team with finding a job, with, resources for that, with helping keep you on track with it. That was really important to me because I know how important that is for, it's not just about learning something, it's about applying it in the job market. Right. And so, the overall experience for me was incredibly positive at launch. And then, like I had mentioned for Wes, getting him in like him going there was the kind of thing where I see him as, a very motivated person, self-motivated person. And that's the kind of thing where I think that, you get as much out of launch as you put in some respects. So Wes and I worked at a company called Great Horn here in Boston. And it's funny because it was a seed stage startup when I joined, and they had already, I kind of knew the owners, and they had already hired a launch graduate, Fred Chapman. And so Fred and I were both there doing front end, and then I started doing back end work as well. I started doing full stack stuff. And so Wes was in the sales org at that point, and he and I are friends to this day. And so when he started, and I told him at one point, I was like, you might want to think about doing a switch like Fred and I did, like you might really enjoy coding. And he knew that we had really positive experiences with launch. And I told him, I said, you're the kind of person who can will take that as a tool and make something out of it, which is what you have to do with it, with an education like that. You have to really run with it and force it into being what you need. Right. And so I knew he was a good match for that. And Wes, so Wes ended up eventually looking at it and going in.
So I'd actually been unemployed for a year and a half, 2 years. And I wasn't having any luck finding work in my field because I don't have a degree. I just don't have a bachelor's degree because of the way things worked out. So a friend of mine who graduated from launch years ago suggested that I look into coding and see if it was something that was of interest to me, because they thought I had the right kind of brain for it. And based on what they knew of me, they thought I would enjoy it. So first they pointed me towards some free resources to learn Ruby, which I fell in love with the language like immediately. And then once I'd been doing that for 6 months or so and had shown that I had an actual interest in it and it wasn't just a passing fancy, which was something I wanted to make sure of myself. Because I easily get enthralled with new ideas and new concepts and new things, and then 4 months later lose interest in that. And I wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. But after I'd been doing it for about 6 months or so, they brought up that they went through launch. This had actually come up in the original conversation, but they brought it up again. And we're like, hey, you're still doing this. You still really enjoy it. Why don't you look into a boot camp? I went to launch. It was really good for me. But why don't you do some research yourself and take a look? In addition to the friend who suggested it, I have 2 other friends who graduated from launch, as I found out later. And so I keep getting these good recommendations for launch, and then there are these other boot camps that like they look good, but I don't have a recommendation for them. Like I don't know someone who went through them. So I just kept coming back to launch, and I decided that that was really a sign that launch is the place that I wanted to go to. Launch is the place that I should go to. The big thing was that in addition to it's a good program, which was probably the best endorsement that I could have gotten, is just that, no, it's good, it's quality, they know what they're doing and they teach well. Was that it's a really good community. That was a big selling point for me. And when I had my initial interview with Dan Pickett, that was one of the things that I actually asked him about was, what does the launch community look like? And he gave me some really good feedback on that. And that's really what pushed me over the edge and sold me fully on it.